Hello, and welcome to the DM's Book Club, a weekly book club podcast where we talk about some Dungeons & Dragons and how we conclude it in our role-playing campaigns. With me back again for another round around the horn, it's Hamilton. Hello, Hamilton.
Round around the horn, though.
Round around the horn. That's how it works now.
I've not heard that saying since I was visiting a nursing home, I don't think.
Look, okay, I feel I've aged in the last... I don't know. Last time I saw you, it's been about for a week or so, but I've aged 50 years at this point.
Yeah, I think you have. Yeah, around the horn. A cup of tea and biscuits, please. All right, perfect.
Oh, man, bourbons, yeah, absolutely.
Oh, yeah. I always think bourbons are really disappointing because you think, it's going to be a nice chocolatey treat, and it's never as chocolatey as you expect it to be. It's never as satisfying.
Okay, if you were serving tea and biscuits, what's your biscuits of choice then? What's your go-to biscuit? If you had friends around,
and it's people I like, or
no,
because there's different biscuits.
It's me. Okay, you want to serve me? Yeah.
Well, see, I think if I was going to be but then this is a test to see if there's someone that you're going to get on with, I think but if it's someone you really like, you're okay, you're getting the caramel chocolate hobnobs.
Oh,
right?
You're going straight in with the hobnobs with caramel. Wow.
That is that is the ultimate biscuit treat, right?
Yeah, but I think they're quite expensive. That's what in my head.
I think they're actually about the same price, but the packet is a good chunk smaller. And you're getting double the amount of calories per one.
Give you a bit of sugar, yeah.
Yeah, but I also think, but I would always have, on the side, dark chocolate digestives, obviously.
Yeah, I was going to say digestive. Yeah, delicious.
Because nothing really, because it is just a classic, and it's great. Yeah. It's just the right, and I'm dunking it in my tea, right? That's,
you have to.
That's happening. Yeah, okay. Yeah. I did hear someone, it was Bill Bryson, said that I think the reason why Britain sort of has survived, the people of Britain have survived all that's happened, is because you can see it. There's something about them that all they really need is a cup of tea and a biscuit, and everything is fine. The world is, and it's it's kind of silly, but it's also really true, because you could literally have the world's worst day where someone says, cup of tea, here's a biscuit. You're you know what? Everything's going to be all right.
I need this moment. Well, you say that. There was a BBC News article a little while ago, which was tea popularity is going out in the UK. And of course, they were talking to, and I hate to say this, young people who like their iced coffees and boba drinks and all those things. And they're you see as an old person drink. And I'm so sad. Because
it's so sad.
I think that's the thing. In my head, when you say cup of tea, encompasses hot drinks, a sit down to relax and think. And that's what I think. A cup of tea and a biscuit, it means, so I'm just sat there, just thinking and allowing myself to relax. But I always think, as soon as you had that little hit of tea, of hot tea,
but it doesn't taste better unless you've had a hard day. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
It's I think sometimes a pint after.
A pint in a pub. It is a pint, yeah, absolutely.
It's the best pint you can ever have is you've gone for a walk and it's Christmas and you've had 4 days of the most awful family that you hate, and then they're let's go for a walk. It rains halfway there, you're caked in mud, your socks are soaking, and then you walk through that door and it's a warm fire. You take your wellies off and it's that first sip of a pint, and the same with first sip of a cup of tea. There's no feeling like it, I don't think. It's just...
I like that you're catering for people who do drink alcohol and do not drink alcohol. You're tea, pint,
both work in that situation, and both with a biscuit, I think, to be honest.
Oh my God, a pint with a biscuit, absolutely.
Pint and a packet of crisps, maybe.
But okay, maybe. yes, that's the... Yeah, we don't really get too much in terms of biscuits here. Obviously, they're cookies and
cookies,
they're slightly bigger. The thing I've had recently, because we had a little do recently, and there's a multi-pack of stuff. So not only are they slightly bigger, these cookies, but also there was ones that are lemon flavored but no lemon poppy seeds in it. And I was I don't know. I miss digestives. I miss hobnobs. They're not really here, which is I just have to cling on to my tea.
Yeah, and a cookie is okay, I guess. A cookie, a nice chocolate chip cookie, like a standard chocolate cookie.
Yeah, but I feel even then, I don't know if I would dunk those particularly into my tea. Chocolate digestives. Fall. Yeah, exactly. The cookie will crumble. Whereas the chocolate digestives, you're done, and then done.
Yeah,
anyway,
perfect. How British can we get?
Well, Hamilton, thank you for the tea check-in and chat. Yeah. But what are we talking about today? What is our topic of choice?
We're taking travels to a different land, not the United States of America or the United Kingdom where I am, but we are traveling into the mystical and magical forgotten realms and the land of Thay.
Woohoo!
Yeah, I don't know if we were on camera, on recording when we sort of found this, but it was post talking about them a little bit, and I sort of I always get these little like updates from DM Skills saying, you might like this.
You might like this.
Yeah, and so we were like talking about the Red Stay being in the movie, the Dungeons and Dragons movie, and
we were doing like Hold Back the Dead, I think, where Szass Tam was in it. So, and I was like, I don't know anything about Red Wizards, and you're like,
Thank you for. I was like, I'm sure we were on months now, isn't it? Ago,
but, it feels like it, yeah.
Yeah, and I was mentioning they were also in Horde of the Dragon Queen. There's a bit where you go to ask them to help you fight the Cult of Dragon, like my enemy's enemy is my friend, sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's why we got this book. I don't know how much we'll go through of it. We kind of decided to just do it sort of chapter by chapter. So we're going to look at the sort of introduction forward, because the book is written by Ed Greenwood, creator of Forgotten Realms. So it's written in the voice of Elminster, his creation, and it goes through loads of different chapters. And we thought we'd look at chapter 1, The People of Thay, which gives you a good overview of kind of the society and culture and governance and economy, I guess, of the world.
It's sort of like on the surface level of what you expect. And I think because we talked about it, because I really don't know much about the Red Wizards of Thay. I think very naively I was like, what are they? Like, I know we have Vecna, and now we have Szass Tam. There's all these undead powers. What's going on, you know? Yeah, the only sort of real knowledge or sort of recognition I have of them is that I know that in the Yawning Portal anthology there was that update to the Land of Thay, which is like looks like a big mega dungeon of stuff and talks about all these different red wizards and stuff, which again sounds amazing, but I was just like looking at it going, this is a big long adventure, but it's in the same place and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm keen to find out more, but obviously maybe we'll start this with a disclaimer and a caveat is that it's not a nice place to live, and maybe right now in the world, these sort of themes that we're going to be talking about maybe a bit too close to home, or maybe feel a bit I don't want to talk about this right now. So just a bit of a disclaimer. We're going to be talking stuff about like dictatorships, essentially. We're going to probably talk maybe
propaganda.
We'll have to talk a little bit about the use of slavery as well in this as well. So there's just a heads up before we sort of dive in. Is that it might not be the episode or a couple of episodes for you.
One of the things it talks about in the foreword is that this is a realm of ruled by evil wizard autocracy. That is it's not like the everything about it, but that's the kind of thing all I knew about it from the beginning. As you said, like it's run, I knew about Szass Tam and the Lich leader, and that's because, and as I've mentioned before, like Forgotten Realms is all about becoming a Lich, right? The Cult of the Dragon is about making Lich dragons. Vecna's a Lich. This guy's a Lich. It's Lich heavy. The Lich whole heavy. Of Forgotten Realms. Yeah, it's like, it seems to be the ultimate goal for all like evil people. Behind all of that, there is still like a rich culture that's been built up through this book. I think that's been really well sort of considered and thought out, and gives it something distinct and a new realm that, even as much as an adventurer you may want to go there for any sort of reason, if it's to go and fight back at Szass Tam, or it's just traveling through on your way somewhere else, because it is kind of in the center of Forgotten Realms. And also lots of the other things we'll find out about it, that like it's a center of trade, and it has other things and elements to it that are of import to other people. So it's created a place that is interesting and multi-layered, that I think is worth investigating on those fronts.
Absolutely. So yeah, as you said, chapter 1 begins with that whole thing of like the name invokes images of an evil nation bent on conquering the surrounding kingdoms and subjugating them to their will. Talking about these sort of the big sort of undead element into the room, but it also, and I think you were saying this as well to me off podcast about the forward as well, like saying that whilst yes, the upper echelons of sort of are evil, there is a nation here as well of very innocent but hardworking people who can't really do anything about it, and they are indoctrinated into this lifestyle of like, well, we support, we are Thay, we are great, we are advanced, and we want to aim all of our life's work and help our children become great certainly with their sort of fascination, obsession, etc., with the art, magic, and becoming great magic users. And I think that's just a very interesting point to put through, is that, not every person you meet is going to be like, templed fingers are good, evil power.
Yeah.
But what they believe in and maybe what they talk about is evil, or is our beliefs that are going to be very vastly different to your own, and maybe that's going to be the points of contention that your party has. So as you taking your example of like moving through Thay, you might meet a lovely merchant who's willing to give you a ride on their cart or talk to you about stuff, but then will say something. And again, as a DM, obviously be careful what you say. We talked about this when we did Eat the Reich a little bit as well, like, hey, you don't have to be spouting these things, but like giving those subtle things where you could be like, that's not okay what you just said, but you are a nice person. And I think that would be an interesting point to talk about. Like, I always sort of talk about the time I was in, I went to Gen Con, and everything had been super lovely there, but then we got an Uber back to the airport, and the person driving it was super lovely, but then started asking me about sports in general. And this was at the time of a big row about someone that had been perceived to be trans in a woman's sport, and they just suddenly just went off about this. And I was just there going like, I don't know who you are clearly in the wrong, but I'm in a car with you driving to an airport. I can't say anything. And it was a very interesting moment, like, like, what do you do? Like, you suddenly, like, you've gone from this conversation going, oh no. So I wonder if that's something that we could play into using these conversations with the everyday people, as you're sort of, again, just something to experience and maybe like explore in a safety of your RPG tables, because these conversations do happen where you disagree with someone but you can't do anything about it.
Taxis are particularly famous for these sorts of things, I think, but I've been in many. I tried to have a big argument, and it's my fault, but I did it in a very calm and collected, and I think I convinced the taxi driver that climate change is actually a thing. But it took quite a lot of convincing, and it was from Paddington to basically Liverpool Street in a taxi, and I was stuck on the Euston Road, and I was basically saying, like, we just were there, and I was like, it's a fucking problem. He's like, bloody now, got to have a bloody electric vehicle, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, but we got into the whole thing about electric vehicles and how they're not good as well, and actually and it was but it's not fucking real, it happened anyway. And I was like, okay.
There's only so much you could do.
Let's see how this long this traffic jam. But I totally agree, it is a thing. And I think also it's also being aware of, like, going to any other culture is going to have, there is different moralities. I know the world is more global than it's ever been, and so progressive and more modernist views are reaching out across, but then at the same time, you go to places which have religious doctrines or that enforce and create values and beliefs in people that are different to our own and can be perceived and are perceived as, not the more progressive moral way. So it's just, those things are going to occur. So to make a world without that, this is the thing. That's kind of what it is. It's creating a culture, a world that has these things. And it does highlight, as we, that it mentions, it says this in the book, and it actually puts a little highlight out saying that it's known and accepted slavery, but it's not accepted elsewhere in the Forgotten Realms and beyond. And if your games broach on this topic in more than a passing manner, it should be made expressly clear that this is an evil act and one that should be rectified. And alongside that, no matter how good a Thay may pretend to be, those that allow and the continued practice of slavery are inherently evil. So it has this sort of outline element in there. And I think, as you said, the way you want to put that to your players is, I think, important. And I think as you said, like, I don't know if we've done one. I don't think I've been there for one particularly about safety tools. I think we've talked about them so much in the round, but it is something that needs to be brought up in all these situations every time you're playing games for any reason. But it's always worth being, hey, we're going here, by the way, like we've just done at the beginning. Spoiler warning or not spoiler warning. Disclaimer.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And like, even to the point where, because it talks about the folks of Thay, and it talks about these two main ethnic groups. We've got the Mulani and then the Rashimi. And the Mulani is sort of the ethnic group that seems to get into all the higher ups, so the bureaucracy, the aristocracy, and the Rashimi are sort of like the, in quote unquote, lower class, so like doing all the sort of labouring stuff. But then something I did find interesting, which I didn't catch until my second or third read through, is that the Rashimi, they wish to and aspire to be like the Mulani, so they will like shave their hair to be more like them, and it just maybe this is how I interpret it, but that whole thing about like, in the news recently, there was talk about like skin lightening creams for some people. Some people will use them to become more white, changing their skin color. But of course, that is like bleaching your skin, and that's not great. We should be celebrating all skin colors. But people are like, well, white privilege, people get through because they look, white equals beauty, all that sort of thing. So that's what I was thinking here is that, again, it's very, very small. But like I said, well, these people, the Mulani, they get, they're seen as like the ideal of what we should be like. So therefore we should change our hair. We should change our clothing to be more like them. And again, it was just a very subtle thing. And I was like, I hadn't really thought about that. Again, it's just something to bring up because some people might be like, hey, I don't, we're going to be discussing a certain privilege here. Then, again, just checking in with people because it's hard to see that, And so it's just something that struck me as I was reading it through because I was like, there's a lot about the Mulani, but not so much about the Rashimi. But then later on, it talks about like, they wish to be like them. So, they see themselves as, the working force of like, the laboring force that they'll do like the shopkeeping stuff. They'll do the mines and all that sort of thing. But in the knowledge that, yes, we're making everything great. It's on our hard backs. They should thank us. Whereas the Mulani, they are in the bureaucracy. They're not incompetent. They're very smart and clever. But it's like two parts of a coin. Whilst they're sort of doing the thinking and the planning and talking about stuff, the hard work, the graft goes with the Rashimi. But the Rashimi wishes to be like the Mulani. At least that's what I took away from this book.
Well, it says, isn't it, this engenders not so much a resentment of the Mulani, but a deep pride that the workers are pulling Thay forward and ever upward to bright greatness, which has been indoctrinated by a propaganda to a certain extent. So, It's not like it's that classic sort of sense of like, it shows how this structure has created this dynamic and is enforcing it as well, and sort of creating a doctrine. And it's so it kind of shows all of these things, which shows, as I said, like, it's been crafted to respond to sort of real world, examples of these things as well. Yeah. So it's sort of like we've all worked in companies where they've told us, you're doing all the hard work, you lot, aren't you? Yeah. And then them fecking off at 5 o'clock while you stay till 10 o'clock.
No, you are the heart of this
the heart of this company. We're a family.
We're a family, but you're not going to get paid overtime. No parental leave. Yeah, nice try.
Exactly. Nice try. So we can even see that on those small, very insignificant moments of it where there are, obviously in the real world, much more extreme versions. On a sort of lighter note, or in terms of just how this book's done really well at building like the idea of the place. I think again it continues through things like just in the foreword, and I really like these things that it mentions just 3 little things right at the beginning that says just like 3 paragraphs that just give so much of an understanding to me. I thought when I was just reading it. So the first, I'm actually not going to do them in order as they come because I think there's more than the other. But the first one that I thought was really cool was it said, like, the same everyday Thayan likely hums tunes to themselves, short little melodies or harmonies playing on melodies they already know, and is likely to overhear other Thayans doing this as they work and travel, with the result that these little tunes sweep the land. I thought it was just a lovely little sentence of just like, oh, okay, there's one tiny little, very small detail that's just built this world even grander in my mind, just because I've got this idea now of just being in a sort of medieval style street, because we're in the Forgotten Realms, but just having these people just humming away, and the sort of walla, I think it's the term they use in SFX for the sound of, if people don't know SFX, for like street sounds and restaurant sounds, but then with that overlaid by little bits of music or people humming and just this sort of like melody, and that kind of was really like a lovely little thing. And it even said as well that they also have a habit of chewing a weed that grows over a Thay, and the weed looks like a spider on its back with 8 dark green thin stems sprouting from a central root. It's lemony minty and a little like parsley, and they just chew it whilst they're working. So I've just got this kind of smell now. I've got sounds, I've got this smell of this sort of lemony mint flavour, and I'm like, I want some of that because I like lemon flavours. And I thought that was those are really lovely things, are just about the people and making this place, just real. Using all the senses to do that as well, not just the visual. The third one was less about the people, but it does say a lot about like how the people commerce, I guess. Because it says the average Thayan labourer and shopkeeper wants undamaged wares and whole items, not for them to bolt of cloth from a distant land or to be cut and sewn, or a stack of tooled handles for them to fit onto hammerheads or pickheads or the like. They want to buy a whole and finished item. And again, it was just something that just said a lot about, like, it talks later about how it's got a wealth of natural resources, but it's not a country of like craft people. It's a country that like gets the raw ingredients, but then it's also a country that has quite a lot of wealth, clearly, because it's just buying finished items. It's about different sorts of craft, which comes onto, but it says a lot about, because it's like modern America, for example, is lamenting at the moment its lack of, or the same as the UK or a lot of European countries, of lamenting their manufacturing and moving into a service industry with largest amounts of, like, the peoples that are economically spending their money on goods that are finished and made elsewhere. And it says this is the kind of world you're coming to. This is actually quite a rich world in that sense, because it's not a crafting world.
I think what I picked up on from those little bits is that, again, as a GM, I try not to plan too much now. Like, I'll have an idea of an outline, but like ultimately let the people go. Well, what I love, and I've read this in Blades in the Dark recently, Trophy Dark does this as well, was they'll have like, here are some scenes, here are some ideas for things where you could, like, here is a moment which you could plonk your characters into. So that idea that, they're walking through the street and they just hear those tunes, someone offers them the weed to eat and the taste of it. And instead, I'm like, cool, that is a moment that I could drop in at any point. And the same thing with the shopkeeper, that you could overhear someone bargaining and goes, oh, well, it's not completely finished. And you're like, well, we only take the finished goods here. I think those are the things, again, as you said, bring the story to life. But for me as a GM, I don't have to have a connected story for it. They are plot hooks. They are little bits of flavor that I can add in easily. And I very much appreciate that, because, sometimes an adventure module just gives you like A to B and doesn't give you like what the stuff's around it. Where players are like, well, what if we look outside the train carriage, and what if we get off at this station? Here you could be like, here's all these other things. So and as you said, the idea of the taste, that you could taste it, you could hear things. Presumably there'll be smells as well, like from the market and people cooking. I know we're going to talk about the food recipes that we see here later on in this chapter. We can do so much with all the five senses. I just thought it was really good, and I wish more books would do that sort of thing where, like, here's some scenes to think about in this particular district, and you go like people going to the mines, you've got people trying to shout each other down in terms of prices at the bazaar, maybe at the quiet of a book library, people like whispering as they're learning bits about the art, all that sort of thing. I just think again, everyday little scenes that you can be like, sight, all the senses essentially that you could put in there. So I thought the forward was very good at bringing you into it.
Yeah.
There's a very interesting thing in that final sort of paragraph which talks about Szass Tam's ex-lover, which I was not expecting. Like this idea of she died, he got bored with her and then gave her like an artifact, or asked her to retrieve an artifact that would waste her away, but then the artifact like gained her consciousness, and so she's now seeking revenge. I was like, this is a wild different chapter compared to like, we're all just like whistling a tune. The whistling of tunes and thinking of like music made me think of obviously musicals in that sort of sense. Obviously they say songs about, now obviously you don't need to turn your RPG into a musical, but because of the way that Thay is, it reminded me so much of the story the musical Cabaret, which is that obviously the idea of like, in Berlin, the rise of Nazis and fascism, and how throughout the musical it changes little bits and pieces till at the end you're like, oh, the Nazis are here, they've taken over everything. And it's just like little bits of music, little bits of refrain throughout. I just thought that was really interesting as a way, again, of using code and like thematic stuff. And obviously there's like one of the most famous songs in it is called Tomorrow Belongs to Me, which is like the call, the cry to sort of like people joining fascism. And it's just every character that starts to sing it leans into fascism and starts selling people out and stuff like that. And I just thought that was just really interesting. Again, having that idea of music being a motif throughout. So that's
I've actually not seen all of Cabaret.
So you've not seen? Oh, a spoiler for the end of Cabaret.
It's fine. Oh my gosh, I need to watch it now. I didn't realize. I knew that was the setting, but I didn't know. That sounds very interesting. I like that little nod to it. That's that way that it builds that story. Oh, that's very. No, I only know it from Liza Minnelli, the famous bit, and Schitt's Creek.
It's, again, your mileage may vary because obviously it's a little bit old, that musical, but it's just an interesting way of like the stories about these characters who are living in Berlin, but then from the outsides you can see there are like themes of the war is coming around, and it's like, wait, this is not. The sort of events leading up to the Second World War, and you're like, things aren't good. And then at the end you go, yeah, things aren't good. It's already happened. Like, there's nothing you can do about it. Yeah, and it was just again that idea of like,
it's quite looming.
Well, it's that horrible thing of like boiling a frog. You do it gently until it's too late. Is that kind of vibe as well? So anyway, we'll get away from my obsession with back on your point.
The Culone Thrickle, I don't know, that's right. Oh, Culoan Thrithcool.
Cool.
It does actually do a pronunciation.
It is a pronunciation guide. I know. Wow.
I just put adventure ? That's all I put, because I thought, I think that's a definite way to strike back at Thay, like at Szass Tam, to like, could be recruiting them or something like that. And there was another thing about the people that I thought was really interesting as well. Like, even though I said like they don't craft things, it does though state that people who are wizards, or like, it says all Thayans seek more power in society and more personal wealth. They also work towards personal fulfillment by attaining the skills and mastering the hobbies and pastimes that bring them the greatest personal pleasure. Be that painting, sculpting, the making of fine jewelry, are considered, are crafting even among Thayan nobles, and are considered personal expression as well as a source of enrichment. They are exports, painting, statuettes, and jewelry, though. But I thought, okay, so they don't make things like they won't make tools like from like a stone and putting it onto a bit of timber. But the more intricate and delicate crafts, the sort of more like, the sort of like painting, the sort of artistic crafts, I guess, are valued.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's the best thing about that. It's like, I love that. Like, they get to like do all this nice painting. But it also, again, speaks to a sort of snobbery in some respects as well, doesn't it? Because it's like the things that you can do with your hands must be delicate and refined and beautiful, and sort of thing. So
I like that.
Again, built up the characterization of this place, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to go back to like in the sort of Folks of Fate, it talks about some typical attitudes and stuff. So again, if you were trying to give something to your players, be like, what kind of the vibe is, I would read out these attitudes. So I'll say them here. So like typical Milani attitudes include these beliefs. So that we are the most advanced folk in the world, obviously, which could mean anything. It could be in terms of politics, it could be in terms of technology, perhaps magic for sure. Thay is strong because Thay is well ordered, and we steadfastly uphold what makes Thay great throughout our traditions. We seek to master the art, arcane magic, sending our children to be apprentices under veteran red wizards so that they make Thay ever greater. It is the inane right of Thay to be the best and mightiest. We need no guidance from gods. Now, I don't need to tell you, and I know we talked about this before, about this sounds very similar to a big Western power.
Fiona, we've got to remember we're both Britishans, and so we can't.
Pot calls kettle black. Yes, absolutely.
Exactly. No, but I mean, yes, let's make there's a very much let's make Thay great again sort of thing going on, isn't there? Yeah, there's a little bit of that.
But I will say as well, there's that again within that as well, the idea of sending children to apprentices, so sending them to private tutelage, private schools, because that's what we need. That's what that's kind of expected. If you've got the ways to do that, you should do that.
Very British pastime, that is. Yeah. No, exactly. No, because that's the thing. It states in more detail later on about the sort of makeup of the Red Wizards, and like to enforce their propaganda as much as to make sure that those with the art, and the art being the use of arcane magic, is controlled, managed. There's no chance of resistance or rebellion from a powerful like group of everyday people who are mastering the art without being counseled by the Red Thay. It's definitely not as much as it's like, it's to make sure it makes them have the best opportunity and gives them the best way to make Thay great. It also stops everyday people without being indoctrinated, getting powers and then rivaling Szass Tam. Because, it says you're tested at a very young age, and tested potentially twice with particular tests, and it might even be like out of the blue. It sounds like they might like
spooky
throw a knife at you or something like that. I don't quite know what it was. Entails, but kind of like we'll find out if they are magic. It's like, we'll see if you can fly. I
like the idea that you are like, okay, I'm going to test them. Ice knife, and you go, what the heck? I've got you.
Yeah, exactly. I knew it. And it's a pretty deadly way of testing, but it's one way.
But this kind of thing about the testing and being like, we must make sure every magic user or any person who's mastering the art is sort of documented in some way. It reminded me a lot of when we talked about Eberron and the dragon mark houses. And obviously that's slightly different because obviously the dragon marks sort of indicate that they're part of the houses and stuff, but there's that the idea of that 13th house, the abhorrent dragon mark, which is like, oh, they're, you know, quote unquote evil because we don't know what they are, but actually it is just, you know, in most recent sort of supplements it's like, oh well, they're just not categorized, so that means that you could be whatever you want. But the idea of like being afraid of having an unknown power, you know, no one knows what it's going to be. Is it for good? Is it for ill? Because obviously all the dragon marks are like for, you know, sort of things like, you know, sort of like sailing ships, all that sort of thing. So it's like same thing here, but on a more simplistic scale. It reminds me a lot of like those teen fantasy books, like, you know, Divergence and whatnot, which is like, oh, they'll test you. Oh, you're going to be different. Have this pebble. You're going to be an outcast now because we can't trust you, all that sort of thing. It's just, but yeah, it's another way of controlling people, isn't it? And what I quite liked, it talked about with the Red Wizards, was that they are aware, and certainly Szass Tam is aware, that you need to give people a way to vent. Because obviously they say, you're not allowed to experiment. You're not allowed to change things and do your own research, right? So what they say is like, okay, but you can have a hobby, and that could be anything from like painting like miniature like minis of some sort, or gaining real estate, you know, that famous hobby that we all have about buying more houses. Yeah, exactly. But I quite like that because then I can imagine that, again, it gives you a little bit of 3D-ness to your NPCs, talking about how you would... if you met somebody who is training to be a red wizard and they're, you know, they're super passionate or whatever, but then, you know, they go, well, it's fine. They allow me to go to my canal boat on the weekends and I you know, I fix the boat. Or I go to my allotment
and I grow work-life balance.
I go to the allotment and grow my herbs and it's part of the community, you know. So I think you could just have a lot of fun with like what kind of unusual hobbies, you know, a powerful red wizard in the making has on the side. Is it crochet?
Yeah, every time you go to their house they've got a hobby room. They're going to have some sort of hobby room.
Of course they have a hobby room. Of course they have a crafting room, and it's like quilting and it's like, but then it's like skulls and it's like death to all, you know. Like, I just have to get out my rage sometimes, you know. That's you know, the cross stitch, you know, the passive aggressive cross stitch, that's what it is.
Passive aggressive cross. I bet that's the biggest take up is that but also I love that, and that's it. I think every house you should make sure has one, and I think also you should have signs up for like classes, do you know what I mean, like groups, you know, like have on the notice board as big as the wanted page is the you know, like you know, you always have all the jobs board is there's a whole section dedicated to a whole events going on at the local guild hall. On a Thursday night there's quilting, on a Friday morning you can do singing lessons, you know, all these sorts of things, you know, like
you know what it is. It's like every Thursday night it's improv group and you just see these wizards.
Give us a place.
Give us a place.
Hey!
Give us a good place. That's a good place. Yeah. And then they're just struggling, and you're just there going like, oh no, these red wizards would be terrible at improv because there's no like natural.
There are 5 of them called Brad.
Yeah, of course. They're all called Brad. They all have red robes, but it's actually plaid red robes.
And they've got no, Fiona. They've got short sleeve red robes with black sleeve, longer sleeves underneath.
No,
you know the sort of, you know, you got to wear you got to wear a long sleeve.
Where did you see this picture of me? No, they're all wearing weird Converse. That's what it is. Yeah,
Lucy and Yaks everywhere.
How could you? No.
How dare you?
I feel very seen as a result. Oh my god! Well, you know, this is the thing. Obviously, this is again re-emphasize. Thay is a terrible place, but I now totally want to have all evil, like inspired nations to have like well, we're very aware they need to have or even have, you know, how it's just like hobbies, but like the NHS goes like, okay, we're going to give you sort of non-medical, you know, sign off. So Zumba classes, you know, that sort of thing that you go to a doctor or a physician and they go, well, something for your stress. I know, you know, cat therapy, and you just who knows?
Therapy.
Yeah, dog therapy.
There you go. I think well, it just builds a richness and a slightly lightheartedness to it. But I think it's interesting. I think it's also like it shows the sort of I think this is the right word, perniciousness of sort of authorities, where it gives you these sensibilities of normalcy and positivity. You can see this in business practices, people mention in joke form, of like, you know, we're all going to go on a day outing, you know, or, you know, want good work-life balance and stuff like that, and saying all these things, but really it's just building you up into to ignore the actual terribleness that's going around you, I guess, in some respects. So not to get too dark on it, but that's the kind of like that's
I mean, that's why you have like startups going, yes, you can stay in the office for as long as you want. We've got a foosball table, we've got video games, we've got a fridge full of snacks. You can stay here as long as, and you're like, cool. Can I get parental leave? Yeah, can I get out? Oh no, but there's a yoga class every Friday for free. Yeah,
my friend went to interview at a law firm, and they said, so they went round all the offices and they went and had these sorts of rooms, and they said like, oh yeah, we're trying to be really more progressive, so we've got areas for everyone to chill, we've got like nice sofas, we've got a couple of video games, we've got a foosball table, and then through here we've got family visitation rooms, and you're like, sorry, what? Oh yeah, like, so because you want to spend time with family, really all about family, so we have these rooms where you can stay the night, and there's room for your kids, and we've got and it's like, sorry? So there's hotel rooms in my office. It's like, well, we just know that people work long hours and weekends, and so hard to see their families. So we always want to make sure that there's an opportunity for their families to come to the office and stay with you for a day. You're like,
oh no,
oh my God. And she was like, I didn't take their job. I was like, no fucking shit.
Way. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Family visitation rooms. It's not a jail.
You get the phone up and goes, hello, Dad. How are you? That's wild. Sad.
That is a magic circle. There's a magic circle law firm. If people know that means it's like the top law firms in the world, sort of thing. They're called the Magic
Holy
Circle.
Heck. That's
the fact they call themselves the Magic Circle is really dickish anyway. So whatever, we'll get on. We'll get over it.
Those are red wizards in training for sure. The sort of unique thing I think I found interesting about this particular chapter as well is that it talks about Thayan cuisine. Now, we've talked about this before when we've looked at other primers. It talks about like, what the appearance are of people, citizens of various cultures, languages, fashions. Fashions always comes up as well, as again, it gives it. But here, it talks about cuisine in quite a lot of detail, and then it gives you 3 recipes to try out with both the sort of fantasy versions, she says in quotation marks, but then in brackets, the real world version. And what I found interesting is that it did say, like, hey, these taste like it is edible, but it might be different to your palate. And I don't know if that was like a direct sort of like thing to Western cultures saying like, hey, it is going to be different. It's a lot sweeter because there's lots of honey and lemons and olives and stuff like that in it. So it might be a bit unusual. But I just thought it was really interesting because it's like often you get like some suggestions of like snacks or whatever, but here you have 3 very different recipes, which involve like fowl or I think there's like lots of stuff with dates as well. And so yeah, I just thought it was really interesting. I'd never seen that before. I just thought it was a bit odd to put it in chapter 1 and not like in an appendix or something like that. But maybe it's just again trying to get people into the like, here's what Thay is like. I don't know.
It was a bit strange because I thought it finished like that chapter had finished because it suddenly was talking about, as you said, like the Thayan culture, the fashion, cuisine, and then you're like, and here are some dishes, like straight there. And you're like, okay, and I have like 3 pages through this, and I'm like, oh, there's more? Now there's general, and you were like, see Appendix A or something like that for these or something. But I guess they wanted to make sure people, they probably were very proud of them, so they wanted people to see them, I guess, maybe. But
yeah, like again, like it does make it more unique, but it's one of those things where, either you have it, I wonder even if you split this into 2 parts, this chapter, because it talks about the folk of Thay, what Thay society is like, talking about the difference of themes, fashion, cuisine, boom, done. Now we go to the sort of higher end of like societal structure and economy and the mining and exports and all that sort of thing, and then the red wizard stuff. Yeah, it just felt like an odd way to put it, because I guess obviously they want to introduce you like, here's the ground level of people that you're going to meet, and here's some food and stuff, it's so much detail. You're like, someone has either done a lot of research or kept writing and then was like, I'm not getting this edited. It's just going in, this is all or nothing,
Yeah, that maybe was it. It felt like it was blending into the ruling Thay, which is the next chapter to come on, which you kind of think, you're right, maybe it would have been better to be like, they could have split this chapter up into like the people of Thay and then like a primer to the Red Wizards or something like that, or chuck the cuisine thing to the end of it. Like, I don't know, it was a bit strange, but interesting. And like reading through them, they sound perfectly like nice. Food that sound perfectly nice. Like it's got spices and dates. It's very much reminded me of sort of Northern African sort of through to Lebanese sort of food. You've got honeys and as the sort of sweeteners, and then but then it does include like other spices like cayenne pepper, coriander, and ginger, and all those sorts of things, which are delicious and yummy. So I was kind of like, I kind of was like, if I had the time, I'd make it.
I think the only thing I would say is that, because obviously we've had stuff like the D&D cookbooks that have come out and all that thing, and what I liked about those was that it goes, hey, obviously you can have like a full-on meal, but here's some snacks you can do and everything. And again, it's that something like if you're doing like a, you're lucky enough to have an in-person game, having people bring in food and making food together, that's really nice. I just wanted, like, because it talks about a little bit about snacks, but then it goes, here's free everyday meals. I'm like, maybe you should have like a, a appetizer, main course, dessert, or something like that, just to, because it seems to me that all three of these meals are like proper serving stuff,
I guess the only thing is, like, the quick one is the squid, isn't it? So it's just like it's like basically like salt and pepper squid. That's what it is, really. It's just that you could do relatively quickly if you wanted to make something, and it's a very picky snack. But if you're going to do salt and pepper squid, just go to M&S and get the ones in the packets, because they are actually so good.
It's really decent.
They are really good.
Yeah, really good squid.
I think in that regard, though, I can't think if there's anything more in this. Was there anything more you've found in this section, this chapter, that you wanted to highlight?
I will just quickly highlight the mining stuff. So it talks a bit about this idea of like how they sort of get certain rocks and stuff, like their own sort of raw materials and stuff. And I just thought it was interesting because I maybe I can't envision it how they do it with this this wagon essentially. So essentially they'll have like a wagon with these sort of tree trunk S type wheels that have pickaxes on it, and then they'll go into the rocks, batter the rocks till oblivion, till they've made a crack. Or goes through something. I think that's what I'm trying to envision here. And then a wizard, they'll hire a wizard to come in to spray it all with water and freeze the water. No, to have a water cannon. That was it, a water cannon to throw the water, and then the wizard will freeze the water, and then as a result, it will expand and crack it and make it easier to go through. And the importance of this was that wizards are better at finding stuff like minerals and ores and stuff like that. So that's why they were doing it rather than using the old sort of way of, so it's a mixture of stuff. So I thought that was interesting. And I wondered, again, maybe later on we'll find that maybe one of the district, the Tharks, maybe is more focused on mining, and like, is there story hooks here? Like, because it feels like there should be a little bit more to it. Like, I was like, is it like, are people around the world obsessed with getting ore from Thay? Is there like, I'm thinking right now, again, with all the tariff stuff happening, is there a particular place that only from Thay can you get these certain minerals that everyone uses, that sort of thing? That's the only thing I was sort of interested about.
I think it mentions that it is just one of the places that had a real high density of like natural resources to mine, but I didn't know if it was anything particular as it said.
But that's interesting then, because as you were saying, like, they like the finished product. So that idea that they've got the raw materials, put it into almost a black box, like sending it away or whatever, and then bringing it back to having like, oh, it's already finished. Maybe
it does say here, Thay mines silver and gold pieces, often fetching exorbitantly high prices due to the brilliant hues and level of purity found in the metals in the natural veins in Thay.
Oh, well, there you go.
So that's it. So it's the gold and silver that they have particularly.
Oh, rich in that. Interesting. And then on top of that, we'll probably go into more detail when we come back to this, but the idea of the government itself. So obviously we've talked about Szass Tam being this undead lich, sort of a majocracy, as you were saying, but they have a council. The Council of Zulkers. Is that how you pronounce it? Zulkers?
I think so.
Who? Again,
I'll go with that.
It has some pronunciations in this book, but not all of them. So instead,
you have to find them at the right place. They're not all in one place. They're when they first turn up, so you've got to remember where
it is. Yeah. So Zulkers, they sort of represent one of each school of magic, so eight schools of magic, which I quite enjoyed. And I think the thing I want to point out now, we don't have to go into too much detail because obviously that'll come later, is that Szass Tam, because of his aim to get magic and stuff like that, he needs a council of yes people. So originally, a lot of these Zulkers were undead, but then he realized that they're just being a lot of yes people, and they actually don't get any creativity as a result. Yes. So he then had to get a few other people in, or raise these sort of red wizards' power. So even though, they have their own ambitions and stuff, they're all working together. I just thought that was really interesting. Again, thinking about politics just now, not surrounding yourself too much with yes people, but having like people who are willing to buck the trend and go against you, because then you make progress. I just thought that, it just really makes it so more 3D.
Even the red wizards get it.
Yeah, even the red wizards get it.
Even the red wizards get it. That's good. There you go. Yeah.
But it's that sort of thing where, like, with these tensions, of course it's on a knife edge, but it makes it so much more interesting because then it's a bigger threat, and maybe it's something for if you're having players that are going to be doing more political stuff, then they can maybe target one of these I mean, I don't know why you would do it, but one of these Zulkirs and see, they'll have missions for you and all that sort of thing. So like, I just thought it was interesting that, it's more fleshed out that we think. It's not just like, oh, here's a list of names. By the way, they're undead and they agree with Szass Tam. They're undead, they agree with Szass Tam. There's all these different things. I just thought it was a little bit interesting. And then, when you get into Ruling Thay, the chapter 2, it goes into a bit more detail about each of them. And again, maybe sounds really silly. I quite like that there is one for each school of magic, except I think there's one that isn't currently available. I think they've passed away or something. I seem to recall from memory. So there's like, so we're going to take that.
That's always fun.
Yeah, exactly.
I think the idea that come to my mind when you've been talking about this with it is like, I think you could play on that ambiguity of their allegiances as well, which makes it more interesting as a player, because there could be the old switcheroo where one of the Zulkirs recruits you outside, or someone recruits you and says, I want to take down Szass Tam, and maybe even make them like they're all about abjuration, or they're all about healing magic, which is necromancy, but they're all like, so like you feel like, oh, they are a good soul, oh, maybe they are like they want to change, but
Revolution.
Really it's a switcheroo. They actually just the evil, they want to kill everyone as well, but it's like they've used you for it. It could be an easy way, but the fact that there is this ambiguity in there, like they're not all yes people, and therefore this idea of I don't know, could be played on.
There is, I know, again, not to jump ahead and spoil, but in that second chapter, there's this idea of the separatists of Thay, and another Zulkir who's no longer part of the council is, going against Szass Tam as well. So, then having someone on the council that's working with this separatist movement, all that sort of thing. Again, everything's using it for their own. Like you and I both love political intrigue. It's like, delicious.
It's the best bit, yeah.
So I feel like already it's got enough for you to get, I want to find out more about it. So I'm because again, most of this comes into like a civil Cold War happening within, so it's very tense. Yes, whilst we have this sort of like, as you said, people whistling tunes and stuff, and they're like, we have an aim, there's this bubbling tension that could explode at any point. And then what happens to those people who are like, well, Thay is great, we are the mightiest, and then go, shoot, my neighbor is not my friend anymore. It's every person for themselves. Red wizards, they've got their hobbies, but they could easily become unchecked. Yeah, it's got a good, like, I want to say melting pot of like ideas. And I think, as long as you treat the sort of like the bits that are not okay sensitively, and as you said that before, like checking in, going, hey, we're not going, we're going to role play through this sort of thing in our comfort zone, doesn't mean it's okay, and anyone can stop, but also we're not agreeing with this.
Yes.
We're not, but it's not like a great place to be. So please keep that in mind. And it's no matter how obvious or subtle it is, we could check in on that. So that's the thing I said. But I think for the first chapter, I was curious about it, and I think it's a chapter that I would easily give to my players. Like, obviously, I think maybe rejig a few bits and pieces, perhaps, but I thought it was enough to get on as a primer for sure, which I'm always a big fan of.
No, I totally agree. I think as I've mentioned throughout this, it's like I think it gives a good wealth of like little things that just build up an idea of a nation, and I think it's really well put together. I think the writing actually as well is worth noting. It's actually really well written. It's engaging, and it keeps you like there's lots of, and there's a lot of art in this book as well.
Yes.
I don't know if we actually mentioned the name of the book, but it's called Thay, Land of the Red Wizards, which you can find weirdly it's actually called the PDF is Thay _Land of the Red Wizards, all __ final __ there's 3 finals.
Yes, someone has definitely taken their time and gone like this one final
but it is well put together, and it's not terribly overexpensive for the amount of stuff you get in. I'm eager to look into the ruling parts. I've read a little bit ahead, and as you said, that civil Cold War is such an interesting terminology, and there's an interesting bit all about how that works. And as you said, there's a whole subsection, not only the Zulkirs, but there's the separatists to talk about, and there's the Tharkions as well, who run all the different arches, which are all these different like areas which have their own sort of interests and stuff like that. So there is more to be found, but it's a good intro, definitely.
And I think it's interesting because, like we said, like they have been mentioned, as you said, like in the Horde of the Dragon Queen. I was having a quick look here, like Out of the Abyss, they're also mentioned there. Phandelver and Below, so that's sort of everyone loves Phandelver. So it's just that's a thing where I wonder if we're going to have like we've got the Forgotten Realms primer happening at the end of this year. I wonder if it's going to be mentioned at all, or if they're going to bring it back or, reimagine it in some way. I suspect not, for various reasons. But I always think it's interesting, like, how we've looked at, Dark Sun or even Ghost Walk. I think it's nice to be able to look at these things and go, oh, this would be an interesting idea. So that's why it's always good to look back at things that maybe won't be made or reimagined or anything like that.
Yeah.
So that we can go, that's a really cool idea, but let's treat it sensitively, because it just means that we're just not looking at a certain westernized view about how fantasy should be,
Well, exactly. And I think that's 100%. But as we found looking through all these things is that there are little interesting nuggets that even if you're not going to go to Thay, it's things in this that you might want to pull from, that inspiration of the little things to mention about the place. That's inspired me to say, like, oh, think about the sounds, think about the smells, little things like that you could tell about. So it's always interesting. You're always gaining something from reading these things, as with any reading, obviously. With a book club, we're going to say those things, right?
Do more reading, guys. Yeah, absolutely. Hamilton, thank you so much for coming back again for the DM's Book Club. And yes, we'll be returning to Thay very shortly for you and I, tomorrow. But until then, where can we find you? Any cool things you want to mention on podcast? A certain Kickstarter doing really well?
There might be. There's this Kickstarter that's doing pretty well, actually. If you've missed it, do not fear. There will be late pledges. You won't be able to get access to everything that was in the Kickstarter because limited editions have all gone for the limited edition hardbook book. So unfortunately, that's gone. But if you still want to grab a hardcover or certain elements of it, I think stuff like they will be on there for a time. But when things start getting made orders from my end, then I'll have to stop them. But yes, there will be late pledges, so you can still do that. And it's called Wraithborn. It's a grim folk fantasy setting for Morkborg and old school role playing games, revival games. And it's been a lot of fun. We've also got miniatures. I made something yesterday. I did a first time actually done some kit bashing, and I recorded it, so I'm going to hopefully do a video about it, because I really wanted a little break from it all happening. So I made I don't know if you can see this.
I can. Oh, there's lots of tentacles there. Oh,
yeah, it's I've got these characters called corrupted ironclad, so they're like once art that have been it's got like a dead person in the middle. I don't think you can see it.
It's a little bit.
I'll send you a photo. So there's going to be miniatures, and nice. There's some extra little miniatures add on. We got a GM screen that we just finally unlocked, which is very exciting. I've been talking to people about that yesterday, which is very cool. So and if you want to get copies as well, this is something else I can announce, because by then it should be hopefully soon. I don't know how long it's going to be taken out, but if you want to get my last Kickstarter, Omen of the Blood God or Demon Slayer, those will be soon up for sale on the Beyond Cataclysm store, which is the people that are helping me do all this, doing all the postage and stuff like that. So I'm getting a reprint done because I've had people buy it through this. So I'm going to get a reprint done it'll be in a couple of months' time. But if you check their store, you'll be able to buy a copy.
Oh, amazing! Yeah, Beyond Cataclysm, they do some really cool things, and it's
they do
a big weight off your mind to do posting. I can imagine.
Oh, Jesus, yes, 100%. I was like, after doing it on the last one, I'm like, never again. I've done it. I've done the gauntlet. I've run the gauntlet. I've done what
You've learnt, and then you've gone, not for me. That's okay. And you're like, I need an expert. I know, Beyond Cataclysm. So they
really love it. Well, they self-market themselves, because when you get something from them, they all do handwritten notes in there. And I'm like, and then when I saw that, I was like, well, I'm using you. That was it.
Absolutely, yeah.
So it obviously works. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
But you know what? It has been so long a time, it feels, since we've last sat here.
Yeah.
It was like, why I was thinking it was such a long time ago. I was even thinking, when could it have been?
Great.
And how could we find ourselves not seeing each other in front of a microphone for such a long time? And then I realized it's not just about the how, the why, or the when. It was all about the place you're in. Yeah. And by that, I mean, where?
I like that one. That was very. I was very creative. I could see the improvising stuff happening, and especially I like the hand gestures as well and the acting.
Everyone doesn't
very
get those,
William Shatner. No, it's just for me. Yes, indeed. How, what, when, and where? Well, I'm so glad you asked. What am I rolling? Is a twice monthly tabletop RPG one-shot podcast where we do lots of different RPGs and different interviews with game designers. We'll have some live streams that are coming up. Savage Worlds should be going out soon. At time of recording, it's all edited. I just need to put it all together. Very exciting. Very glad that's all done. We have some Too Long Didn't Reads happening. I've changed the schedule, so we're doing it once a week now, rather than me trying to do twice a week and then changing it last minute, because it turns out I'm very busy. The other thing I would like to note is that by this time it's probably all wrapped up, but Blades in the Dark on RP Geeks is a short 6 episode series that I've been running using the Blades in the Dark system with the Deep Cut supplement. And yeah, I'd love people to go check it out and tell me how great I am, but also how great the series is as well. I think it's a good series.
And the other players.
And the other players are done really well. But yeah, we've got a wonderful cast. We also had a guest on for the second episode, Josephine McAdam, who turns out knows Blaze of Dark very well, which is very intimidating. But it's a delight to have them on. And yeah, just please go check out those stuff, because again, I love running games and I love trying different things, and I've definitely fallen down the deep Forged in the Dark rabbit hole. So yeah, go check it out and just and enjoy different games, because obviously that's the point, including the fact that we've got at this point 2 episodes of the GM's book club out on the feed, which will be exciting. We've got
Are they out? Will they be out by now?
Mm-hmm.
Oh
yeah.
They're not out now, are they?
No.
Okay, I was just thinking I've not missed that.
No, you will know when it comes out. Yes, we've got Eat the Reich, and we've got the Warhammer Fantasy role playing, and we've got a few others coming in the pipeline as well. So and if you're interested in talking to us more about RPGs, whether it's D&D or otherwise, obviously we welcome everyone here who's just interested in role-playing games. Go check out our Discord. There's a link in the show notes as well, where we can just chat about anything that's interesting to you, and including like all the good and all the bad as well. We're here to just have a good time and encourage people to do role-playing games. So yeah,
100%. Well, thank you, everyone. And I think then there is not much more else to say then, is there, Fiona?
No, not at all.
See you on the flip side.
Bye.
Bye.